Okay, why don't we get started? Good morning. My name is Scott Jakovich. I'm with the California LTAP. We're privileged to host today's webinar on lake and stream bed alteration notifications, which is being presented in partnership with the Caltrans Division of Local Assistance and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Before we get started, I'd like to share just a couple of housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded. We should have it available for public viewing on our YouTube channel by tomorrow night. I'll be dropping a link to that channel in the chat box once we get underway. Second, we welcome your use of the Zoom chat feature, which everybody has discovered. Thank you. To share any comments or suggestions or just introduce yourself. We'll also be using that to drop links or other useful resources in during the presentation. We do ask, though, that you please hold off on asking questions until the end of the presentation, when we'll provide a time for formal Q&A. And of course, if you could keep your mics and webcams off until then, that'll help everybody hear our speakers more clearly. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Kylie Swartz from the Caltrans Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach. Kylie, you ready to go?
Hello, my name is Kylie Swartz, and I'm a program coordinator for the Division of Local Assistance, Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach, also referred to as the ECO Office. Today, I will share the ECO Office purpose statement, introduce our team, give a brief overview of the Resource Agency partnership effort, and provide resources and contacts. Our office purpose statement is to ensure consistency, accountability, and efficiency in NEPA compliance across California by empowering districts and local partners through clear guidance, collaboration, and centralized oversight. ECO is a robust team of environmental scientists that support every function of NEPA compliance across the state. NEPA requires that all permits are completed for a project, even ones that Caltrans DLA doesn't have direct oversight over. To that end, the resource agency partnerships were developed to support, inform, and empower Caltrans Division of Local Assistance partners. Today, you will meet one of our NEPA coordinators, Danielle Elledge. She will be moderating the Q&A at the end of the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach, ECO, initiated our first partnership with CDFW in fall 2022 to explore options to collaborate on training opportunities, information sharing, and engagement. For training opportunities, in August 2023, the first joint training between Caltrans and CDFW was executed. Since then, we have successfully completed annual webinars with CDFW and expanded our resource agency partnerships to include the State Water Resource Control Board and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Eventually, ECO plans to partner with all state and federal resource agencies. In our information sharing, we have direct communication with federal, state, and local agencies where we learn about each other's priorities and challenges. For each agency we partner with, ECO introduces the world of local assistance and the types of projects that often require their permitting. With emphasis on mutually beneficial nature of this relationship, DLA customers are also their customers. For engagement, through trainings, we provide opportunities for 1. Q&A to facilitate direct engagement between resource agency staff and DLA's local partners. 2. A partnership between Caltrans and resource agencies to engage, inform a diverse group of local assistance partners who have a stake in learning directly from us regarding their project needs. And 3, completion of a post-webinar survey, which includes an option to meet with ECO one-on-one to discuss local partner-specific needs. The survey results and the one-on-one are used to prioritize subsequent partnership development and training topics. At the end of this Q&A session, we will have a survey prepared for you to answer. Here are some of our resources. The external ECO website. This is a resource for DLA's local agency partners. Notably, you can find past resource agency partnership trainings recordings by scrolling down to that heading. Also included are links for other resources such as the Local Assistance Procedure Manual, LAPM, and the Standard Environmental Reference, the SIR. ECO is the one-stop shop for all local assistance environmental questions. If you have your questions scoped, please feel free to reach out to a specific specialist. But if you are unsure of who to reach out to, please reach out to any of us and we will be happy to help. We often troubleshoot and brainstorm questions as a team, so we will get it done. If we don't have the answer, we will coordinate with other DLA offices to find you the right SME to answer for your question. Before we proceed, please remember that Caltrans DLA does not have authority over local agency state permits. ECO is facilitating this training in coordination with CDFW to provide information sharing for DLA local partners. If you are a Caltrans employee, please remember that this is informational only for you to understand the process that local agencies and their partners navigate. If you work on capital projects, please be sure to check with the specialists at Division of Environmental Analysis and/or your CDFW liaisons for guidance on any topics discussed today. With that said, we are so happy to announce our partnership speaker today. Please welcome Carmen Tull.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you for joining us today for our presentation. Like Kylie said, my name is Carmen Tull, and I am the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Lake and Streambed Alteration Program lead. And I want to take a moment here to introduce you to the team so that you can put a face to the name as we present. First up, we have Shannon Kylie, who is our staff service analyst, who also manages the EPIMS help desks. Say hi. Next, we have Aidali Guerro, our environmental scientist, who also monitors the LSA help desk.
Good morning, everyone.
And finally, we have Angie Baker, the LSA program supervisor.
Hello.
Together, we will provide you with information on CDFW's Lake and Streambed Alteration Agreement notification process in the Environmental Permit Information Management System, also known as EPIMS. So I'm going to hand it off to Shannon, who's going to start us off. Shannon?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Our objective for this presentation is to provide an overview of the code that regulates the LSA program, understand what information CDFW is looking for in a notification to deem it complete, go over the EPIMS process from registration to notification submission, identify resources that can assist in preparing your notification, and address any questions you might have about the process. So our goal is to reduce the number of incomplete letters you may receive and the time it takes to complete your LSA agreement. So we'll go through all the slides and we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So write down any questions that you have and we'll answer them after the presentation. So when is a notification necessary? A notification is necessary if you plan to substantially divert or obstruct the natural flow of any river, stream, or lake, substantially change or use any material from the bed, channel, or bank of any stream, river, or lake, or if your project may deposit or debris, waste, or other material containing crumbled, flaked, or ground pavement where it may pass into a river, stream, or lake. The notification requirement is based on the activity. Some activities that occur outside of a waterway may impact the waterway. In other words, if you're doing anything that might impact a river, lake, or stream, it's a good idea to notify CDFW to determine if an agreement is required. And please note, there's no definitions for the terms used. The term substantial is not defined, although it's used in Fish and Game Code 1602. LSA program staff will evaluate project impacts on a case-by-case basis using scientific principles. Staff consider factors including the time of year and species that could be impacted. These are the agreement types that are most relevant to the projects that local agencies conduct. Standard agreements are for a project that will be implemented once, but structures from the project may persist. Examples include culverts and bridges. Routine maintenance agreements are for the routine maintenance of a structure or area. The agreement describes the procedure the permittee shall follow to complete the routine maintenance projects the agreement covers. It can cover multiple routine maintenance projects that will occur during the life of the agreement. Examples include debris basin maintenance and fuel management zones. Master agreements have a project term of more than 5 years. It covers multiple projects where specific detailed plans have been prepared at the time of notification submittal. The agreement describes a procedure the entity must follow for their projects. The agreement will identify measures the entity may be required to incorporate as a part of each project to protect fish and wildlife resources. Examples include large-scale developments and routine maintenance within a region. If large-scale projects can be broken down into specific detailed projects, then an applicant can submit multiple notifications for a standard agreement. Standard agreements and routine maintenance agreements can either be short or long-term. Short-term agreements have a project term of 5 years or less, and a short-term agreement can be extended once for no more than an additional 5 years for a total term of 10 years. Long-term agreements have a project term of more than 5 years, and they're not subjected to the 30, 60-day review periods that we'll discuss later in this presentation. Notification is not voluntary. You may proceed with your project when all of the following occur. CDFW receives written notification and a full fee. CDFW determines the notification is complete. CDFW issues the final agreement or determines that no agreement is required. Something to remember about the notification review process is that CDFW is not required to start processing your notification until the applicant submits a complete notification and CDFW has received all applicable fees. Once the complete notification and all fees are received, CDFW has 30 days to determine if the notification is complete. In a previous slide, I mentioned complete notification must be submitted prior to CDFW starting the review process. However, sometimes submitted notifications are deemed incomplete. The Lean Six Sigma 1600 Notification Process Improvement Project noted that the most common reason notifications are deemed incomplete are insufficient project descriptions, inadequate project plans and impacts, no project impact map, no mitigation, and incorrect fees. If the notification is deemed incomplete, CDFW staff will send it back to the applicant with a letter specifying the additional information that is required. Now, what makes a complete notification? Your notification should provide CDFW with sufficient detail to allow staff to understand the project and evaluate its potential impacts on fish and wildlife resources. Fish and Game Code describes what must be included in a notification and what staff are looking for. And those items are a detailed description of the project's location and map, the name of the river, stream, or lake that will be affected, a detailed project description, including construction plans and drawings, a copy of any CEQA documents prepared, but know that CEQA doesn't have to be complete to have your notification deemed complete, a copy of any other applicable local, state, or federal permit or agreement already issued, and any other information required by the department. These requirements are included in the notification forms developed by CDFW. And please note that CDFW's scientific staff determine if the activity will be substantially adversely impacting fish and wildlife resources, not the applicant, consultants, attorneys, etc. After CDFW has deemed the notification is complete, there's 4 possible outcomes. Within 60 days, CDFW determines the activity will substantially adversely affect fish or wildlife resources and works to issue a final agreement that includes reasonable measures to protect those resources. CDFW determines an agreement is not needed because the activity will not substantially adversely affect existing fish or wildlife resources if the entity conducts the activity as described in the notification, including the measures to protect fish and wildlife. You'll receive a no agreement needed letter and the activity may commence without an agreement. CDFW determines a notification is not required. This is different from a no agreement needed, where your project as described is sufficient in protecting fish and wildlife. Notification not required means that the applicant did not need to apply in the first place because Fish and Game Code 1602 didn't apply to their project. If CDFW determines a notification is not required, you'll receive a notification not required letter and a refund of the fees you paid. After CDFW determines the notification is complete, but fails to issue a draft agreement within 60 days, the project is approved by operation of law, and then the activity may proceed exactly as described in the notification. If this happens, you may receive an operation of law letter to verify that your project has been approved by op law. But this letter is not required to proceed with your project if you conducted exactly as described in your notification, including all design plans and protective measures that you provided. To begin the notification process in EPIMS, log in or register for an account. All project applicants need an account, even if the plan is to have a consultant who will be listed as an additional contact complete the notification for them. Having an account allows users to edit and manage the application from their own secure login, and password sharing is prohibited for legal and security reasons. The Environmental Permit Information Management System, EPIMS, is an account and password protected computer system developed by CDFW for environmental review and permitting projects. Since 2020, EPIMS has been used for processing all LSA notifications. It is extremely important that you pick the correct region when you start your notification. Staff cannot transfer notifications between regions, and you'll need to start over if you choose the incorrect region. So please read closely and select the proper region when you start your notification. So there's 9 sections in the notification for LSAs on EPIMS. Each section needs to be filled out in detail. The next few slides are going to cover each section and what needs to be included in each section for your notification to be deemed complete. First, identify the project applicant, their associated organization, any additional contacts, and a designated representative that can act on the applicant's behalf. Please note that the designated representative has the authority to sign the agreement, but they must be added as an additional contact to get notification correspondence, to view, edit, and sign notifications in the final agreement. Provide a notification name for the overall project, for example, Johnson Road culvert replacements. The applicant is always the applicant proposing the project. The applicant is legally responsible for the project activities in the notification. Consultants, lawyers, engineers, biologists, and other representatives should be listed as additional contacts and not the applicant. There can only be one designated representative on a notification. This person must have an EPIMS account, and their name should be added as an additional contact as well. The last slide went over a lot of different roles in the notification, and here are some clarity on these roles. The applicant is the person who's legally responsible for upholding the terms of the agreement. Once the final LSA agreement is issued, this person will become known as the permittee. The person listed as the applicant should never be a consultant, attorney, engineer, forester. If the applicant, the legally responsible party, is an organization, if the applicant, the legally responsible party, is an organization such as a business or an agency, you'll want to enter the name of the individual who will represent the organization as the applicant. The organization serves as an anchor that connects multiple EPIMS users to a notification with their own secure login. Consultants, lawyers, engineers, the designated representative, and any additional contacts must be associated with the applicant's organization. Applicants should never be associated with the consultant or lawyer's organization. Additional contacts are users who have been given the authority by the applicant to view and edit the notification. The designated representative is a user who's been given authority by the applicant to sign the notification and the agreement on the applicant's behalf. Again, the designated representative must be added as an additional contact to get notification correspondence and to sign the notification and final agreement. When registering for EPIMS, we recommend adding an organization as it helps the process to include a consultant, engineer, lawyer, or anyone else involved in the project. Even if the applicant is not a part of an organization like an agency or a business, an organization can still be made with the project information, such as the project name or location. EPIMS allows multiple users to be associated with the same organization to access specific notifications and agreements. This allows each person to edit a notification under the security of their own account. So there's no need for password sharing at all. Users can only access the notification they've been added to as an additional contact. So this slide shows 3 people are associated with an organization. Persons 1 and 2 can access notification 1, while persons 2 and 3 can access notification 2. If you're registered without an organization, you can email the EPIMS help desk at epimshelp@wildlife.ca.gov to add one to your account and request to associate other EPIMS users so that they can be added as an additional contact to your notification. The help desk is a great resource for any EPIMS related questions that you might have. The next component is the notification. In the notification process is the project location and category. This section should describe the physical location of the project site and how to get there. This section also serves to identify what type of project is being proposed. Examples of projects are structure replacements or new construction of bridges or culverts, check dams, a grade system crossing, vegetation removal, channelization, straightening of a stream or river, or modifications of a lake or lake bed. In this section, you will also be asked to identify the river, stream, or lake being affected and the number of projects. If there's more than one project, the information requested needs to be repeated for each project under the notification. The project location description should be detailed enough so someone can find the project site with the directions that they've included. A physical address is the best. There's a drop-down box to select no if there's not a physical address, and you can see that in the circled in the slide. If a project site doesn't have a physical address, please include directions that reference road names, mile markers, coordinates, or any other information. This section needs to be filled out for each individual project you have in the notification. For example, each culvert, bridge, and water diversion needs to be individually included. Additionally, if the project is occurring on more than one APN, you must add a row for each property. Next, you'll be asked to identify the water body that will be impacted and what water body it may be a tributary to. Sometimes the stream will be unknown or unnamed, and that's okay. You can find the terms unknown or unnamed in the drop-down menu. Please identify if water will be present during the work. If water will or may be present during work, then you'll need to provide a diversion plan. Make sure the data entered in this section is accurate, as data is used as a search tool for statewide tracking. You'll need to repeat all of these steps for each project.
So if you need to add multiple projects, follow the form instructions and select Add Row to enter the project information. So for example, if you are replacing 5 culverts, there should be 5 different lines listed in this form, one for each of those projects. So it's important to take the time to read the form instructions because it will save you time down the road when your notification is being reviewed for completion. So here's an example of multiple projects affecting one stream. So in this image, we can see to the west in the top left corner, a commercial building project that is being proposed to be constructed. There's a stream that flows north to south, and there's also an existing bridge here at the top. So for this commercial building project, they are proposing multiple different projects that are going to impact the stream differently. Project 1 is a driveway replacement, which may include grading and a temporary diversion. Project 2 is an energy dissipator in the northern field made of riprap and with a concrete storm drain. And project 3 is a second energy dissipator in the southern field, also made of riprap with a concrete storm drain. So this whole project includes 2 energy dissipators and a road crossing. Since this project will not alter the existing bridge at the top, it does not count as a project that's subject to a notification fee. So this first energy dissipator in the north will be built within the bank of the stream, and it's a standalone project that will allow flows to be dissipated before entering the stream. This is considered one project subject to a notification fee. The second energy dissipator in the southern field will also be built within the stream bank, and this is another standalone project, and it will allow for flows to be dissipated before entering the stream. Now, this is considered another project subject to the notification fee because you could build one of these energy dissipators without building the other one. And so then finally, the driveway, for that to be built across the stream, it's a brand new structure that is going to require grading, vegetation removal, and a temporary diversion. However, all of those activities are interrelated, meaning for a common purpose or design relating to the single purpose of constructing something. In this case, all those activities need to occur for the single purpose of building the driveway. Other examples in your world may be a bridge and riprap or removing vegetation to build a bridge. So in total here, in this whole thing, there are 3 projects that are subject to a fee: 2 energy dissipators and 1 driveway. Here's a different example of multiple projects impacting several streams. This image shows 8 stream crossing upgrades that are labeled with black dots and a circle around them. And then there is 1 point of diversion that's labeled with a blue triangle that's at the top left of this image. Each stream crossing would constitute a separate project that requires its own notification and associated fees because they can all be constructed independently of each other. So in this example, the 8 stream crossing upgrades that will be graded result in 8 fees. The next component of the application is the project description term and impacts. The project description term and impacts overview is an incredibly important section that needs to include detailed information. CDFW staff reviewing your notification are not nearly as familiar with the project as you or the applicant is. So this section really gives you and the applicant an opportunity to explain the project in detail and all the potential impacts. You are going to need to provide a detailed project description, identify the specific time frame when work is going to occur, and that includes the entire project term and then any seasonal work periods in between them. Identify all impacts and specify if they are temporary or permanent. Identify impacts by habitat type, and then identify any special status species that could be impacted. So CDFW requires this detailed information so that we can better understand what fish and wildlife resources could be impacted by a project and what protective measures need to be in place to avoid or reduce those impacts. Okay, so then what makes a detailed project description? A detailed project description includes a step-by-step explanation on how you're building out this project. The description needs to be comprehensive and specific to convey all the potential impacts, but also written in a way that it's easy for the layperson to understand. Additionally, the project description and impacts that are in the notification need to be consistent with any supplemental material that you provide or attach. So for example, let's say you want to build a bridge over a river. Well, there are a lot of components that are going to go into building that bridge over a river. Things like, how will the construction crew access the site? Where will equipment be staged? Is there an existing bridge that needs to be demolished? All right, so how's that going to be done? Does a water diversion need to be implemented? If so, how will the water be diverted? Does any vegetation need to be cleared? Etc. You get the idea. There are a lot of components and individual steps that go into any project. Each component or step could impact the stream in a different way. So the easiest and most direct way to convey a project description and the potential impacts from each activity is to provide us a detailed step-by-step walkthrough. When you describe all the potential project activities in detail and in order, it makes it really easy for us to truly understand the project and what conditions may be necessary for us to protect fish and wildlife resources. The project term and seasonal work periods should also be consistent. The seasonal work periods should specify the dates work may be performed each year. So fill in the number of days worked for each work period. You're not going to be able to save the form or move on to the next component until you enter the number of work days. If the work period will exceed 1 year, specify the work period for each year of the project. So please ensure that you enter work periods for every year of the project in the section titled seasonal work period. So for example, if you have work periods over 3 calendar years, you will have days entered in work period 1, work period 2, and work period 3. Or another example, let's say you plan to work for 30 days in any of the given years. You would enter the work periods you may conduct work in. So in this example, the applicant plans to work for 30 days between February 24th and March 25th in any given year between 2025 and 2028. There are 3 different sections within the project impacts portion. This first impact section describes the impacts to the water body. So you're going to need to describe any foreseeable impacts to the flow, bed, channel, bank of the river, stream, or lake. Quantify the dimensions of the impacts in both length and area. Include the volume of material that will be moved, displaced, or otherwise disturbed. Describe impacts to the watercourse and the riparian zone. Distinguish between temporary and permanent impacts. Identify what activities are resulting in what specific impacts. And this part is very helpful in determining what will be a permanent or a temporary impact. Quantify the upstream and downstream impacts to the project. This is critical as well because it's really easy to focus on the project footprint alone and not the erosion or the scouring that may result from the project upstream or downstream. So example, you're installing a bridge with piles in the stream. Erosion and scouring may result because of the piles in the stream, and these impacts to the stream need to be quantified and described. The second impact section describes the potential impacts to special status species. Your response here needs to identify all special status species that could be impacted and what habitat type they may occupy at the project site. Describe the potential impacts to those special status animals or plant species or the habitat that could support those species. You need to specifically outline what activities could result in those impacts and identify the source of where you came from, where you got this information and your conclusion. So this is a good time to talk about what a special status species is. It is an animal or a plant that is listed for or proposed for listing under the state or federal Endangered Species Act, a plant designated as rare under the State Native Plant Protection Act, a plant or animal identified as a candidate, sensitive, or special status species in a local, regional, state, or federal list, plan, or policy, or a plant or animal that meets the definition of endangered, rare, or threatened species under CEQA guidelines. That's a lot, but a list of all the special status species can be found on CDFW's California Natural Diversity Database, or the CNDDB page, and which is linked here at the bottom of this slide. The third impact section describes the impacts to trees and vegetation. So like all the other sections, you're going to describe the potential impacts, except for here, you're going to describe those impacts to all trees and vegetation. Identify the vegetation that will be impacted by habitat type, identify all the trees that will be impacted, and then provide a DBH and canopy diameter, indicate whether the impacts are temporary or permanent, and then specifically outline what activities could result in what impacts. Up next is the environmental review component. CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, is a requirement in the LSA notification process. There are 3 different agency roles under CEQA: lead, trustee, and responsible. The lead, while it's often the city or county, it's the public agency that has the principal responsibility for carrying out or approving the project. The lead agency decides the CEQA document type that's required for the project. When executing an LSA agreement, CDFW has some level of responsibility over a project and acts as a responsible agency, meaning CDFW needs to review the lead agency documentation for fish and wildlife impacts prior to being able to issue an agreement. A trustee agency is a state agency having jurisdiction over natural resources affected by a project. CDFW is responsible for California's natural resources and reviews draft CEQA documents for projects that may affect the state's fish and wildlife and their habitats. For the CEQA section, there are 4 items that you need to submit. 1, a certified or approved environmental document, notice of exemption, or draft, if that's all you have. 2, notice of determination if it's done. 3, your CEQA findings if you've prepared them. And 4, proof of having paid the environmental document filing fee, also known as the CEQA fee. Now, I need to note that you do not need to have these items for a complete notification, but CDFW can't issue your final agreement until the lead agency files their NOD or NOE for this project. So we recommend to start consulting early with your regional CDFW office to avoid any last-minute issues that may affect execution of the agreement. Now, when CDFW is reviewing this, there's a couple things that we're looking for. The level of CEQA documentation, if there are significant impacts, is there an environmental impact report? If you're using a categorical exemption, are there exceptions to the categorical exemption that weren't examined? Are all project activities described in the CEQA document? Is the entire project boundary included in the mapping and written description of the CEQA document? And are the impacts to rivers, lakes, and streams pursuant to Fish and Game 1600 specified? And are all the impacts to fish and wildlife trustee resources analyzed in the CEQA document? Keep in mind, an addendum can be added and needed to your project if the project footprint or the species are not consistent to what you notified for. There's also a place for you to indicate if you have any documents pursuant to NEPA. NEPA is pretty rare in the LSA world, but if you do have any of the 4 NEPA documents for your project, select a type from the drop-down menu and then attach it to the Documents and Maps component. The Measures to Protect Fish, Wildlife, and Plant Resources section provides you with the opportunity to describe specific avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures as part of that you propose to implement as part of your project, and it's the next component in the application. The 3 bulleted items here on the slide are really what's needed for this section. You need to detail how you're going to address sedimentation and erosion, specify how project activities will avoid or minimize impacts to biological resources, and explain how you will mitigate. So, for example, do you have a restoration plan or a compensatory mitigation? it's pretty hard to get this one wrong. You do need to include something and minimal description in these sections for a complete notification. CDFW may or may not agree that it's sufficient, but you're not going to get an incomplete for it. Typically, CDFW just adds on to what you have already proposed. And so this slide shows what the EPIMS interface looks like for this component. The first text box is for the methods the project will use to prevent the sediment from entering any streams or watercourses during or after construction. And so this may include things like working during the dry season, straw wattles, dust suppression, silt fencing, or other best management practices that you plan to implement. If your project is sediment removal from a culvert and you're in the desert, your project description may include something like depositing that sediment on the downstream side of the culvert. The second box is for your avoidance and minimization measures. This may include things like general pre-activity surveys, nesting bird surveys, biological monitoring, recontouring the stream, reseeding. There's a bunch of different things. But this section should address special status species and also common species like birds and bats. This third section here is for you to describe the proposed restoration or compensatory mitigation. So is there a restoration plan, or are you buying credits? Are habitat management lands incorporated into your ITP mitigation? So include that here. But keep in mind that a restoration project may constitute a separate project according to the LSA fee schedule. The restoration work will need to be described in the project description, and a separate restoration plan document will likely be needed. So here's the take home. These sections should not be generic, and they should not just reference your CEQA documents. This needs to be a standalone document that is specific and references specific measures that will be taken. Up next, including any past notifications, permits, agreements, or orders. You are going to need to identify any notification previously submitted or any LSA agreement previously issued by CDFW for this project described in the current notification. You will include a copy of the previously submitted notification or LSA agreement in the documents and maps component. If this notification is being submitted in response to a court or administrative order or notice, or a notice of violation issued by CDFW, complete this section for each order, notice, or violation, and then upload a copy to the documents and maps component. And similarly for the last component, list any local, state, or federal permits that have been required for this project and mark whether or not they've been applied for or if they've been issued. If they've been issued, please include a copy of each permit in the maps and documents form. And you are responsible for obtaining all necessary permits and authorizations from CDFW and any other agencies before beginning any project described in the notification. So you may need a grading permit from the county, take authorization from CDFW, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or NIMFS, or maybe you need a Section 404 from the U.S. Army Corps. It's your responsibility to have all of those in place prior to starting activities. All right, so here's that map and documents portion that I've been telling you to upload things to. So here's a list of some of the categories of documents that might be needed. Relevant is the key term here. Relevant means information helpful for CDFW in understanding your project. Why you propose what you've proposed for both the project and the mitigation. If it was prepared, submit it. If you're not sure, reach out to your regional office early in your project development process so that you can discuss it. You may be asked and required to submit more specific examples, including restoration plans, engineer drawings, or hydraulic study. If you're going to include biological reports, they need to be recent and applicable. 1 to 3 years is typically okay, depending on the species, the area, and the project. If it's older than that, it could be deemed incomplete, or more likely, the agreement is going to have heavy pre-construction survey or monitoring requirements and possibly a greater compensatory mitigation component. If you have basis of design reports, those can be great and critical because it describes the who, what, where, when, why, and how. It conveys in written form the evidence of why the project has been designed this way and why the alternative is being proposed. So any of these can be required in the agreement. However, the baseline required documents that must be included in every notification are the project site map, an aerial view map, and a project site photo. Again, this is a screenshot from EPIMS, and the blue box here at the top has instructions on what should be included in the maps and a guide on using Google Earth to create an acceptable map. Any diagram, drawing, or plan should be site-specific and provide site-specific construction details, include the dimensions of each structure, and the extent of the project activity in the bed, channel, bank, and floodplain. It needs to be an overview of the entire project area, showing the location of each structure and activity, any significant area features or stockpile areas, or any areas of temporary disturbance. And it needs to show where equipment and vehicles will access the area. So here's an example of a project area map. The black outline identifies the area where the surveys were conducted. The red dots show overall permanent impacts, and that yellow shading shows temporary impacts from the project. The impacts to CDFW streams are shown in blue, dark blue hatched, and then they used light blue here to identify the streams within or nearby that are not being impacted. This map set also came with a coordinating table that quantifies the area of impact for each crossing. So like all of our other guidance and all the other sections of this presentation, make your map project specific. Consider what makes sense and how the map can best support your notification. So now we'll move on to the fees. There are two ways that you can pay. You can pay online with a credit card, or you can send a hard check to the regional office where your project is located. If you're mailing a check, the check should be mailed close to the notification submittal date, and make sure you include your notification number, project name, the permittee or designated representative contact info on the check or the money order form. On the left side of the screen here where the arrow is, you can see there's the LSA. This is a screenshot of the LSA website where you can provide online payment if that's what you choose to do. There's a link to CDFW's online license sale and services where you can make that payment. Be aware, though, that the online credit card system has a 5% non-refundable transaction fee. Again, CDFW cannot begin reviewing or processing your notification until we receive all fees. Keep in mind that the fees are always increased in January, so please be aware of your timing. If you have a complex project, please don't hesitate to reach out to CDFW regional where your project is located and reach out early before you submit so that we can provide feedback on determining what a project is. Again, we cannot determine whether or not the LSA notification is complete or otherwise begin processing your notification until we've received all appropriate fees at the appropriate regional office. The California Code of Regulations, it provides the fee calculations for LSA agreements. This same section defines the types of permits and describes the fees associated with each type of those permits. Fees are calculated on a per project basis. The code section defines what a project is with respect to fee calculations. And so according to code, a project is one of two things as determined by the department. It's one activity or it's two or more activities that are interrelated and could or will affect similar fish and wildlife resources. So an example of one activity would be a project that is the installation of a culvert at one location in the water body that will substantially change the channel. An example of two or more activities that are interrelated would be the construction of a bridge across a stream that requires the removal of riparian vegetation, the installation of abutments in or near the stream, and the temporary dewatering of the stream using a diversion structure. Those three activities together would constitute one project for the purpose of calculating the fee under this section, because they're all related to the single purpose of constructing that one bridge at one location. On the contrary, let's say you're constructing 3 bridges and 2 culverts across a stream at 5 different locations. This would not constitute one project. This instead would constitute 5 separate projects, even if those structures were providing access to a common development site or physically connected to each other by a road. They are all independent of each other, could be built and completed without relying on each other. 5 separate projects. The project location category section is tied to the fees section. So your previously identified and named projects are going to appear in the project name drop-down menu. You're going to select each project one at a time, and then you're going to select the project cost range and enter the cost of the work at that location. We get a common question we get is how to determine the cost to build the project. And the project cost is for work within the stream at that location only, not for the whole project. You will also be asked for the actual project cost. And once entered, the fee for that individual project will be auto-generated based on the current fee schedule. So the fee is based on when the agreement is requested and when we receive the fee in our office. So again, this is really important around December and January because, like I said, we increase the fees every January. So you could submit your notification through EPIMS in December and then send the fee in the mail in January separately. And in that time, the LSA fees will have increased, causing your payment to no longer be accurate. So for the purposes of calculating the notification fee, project cost range refers only to the project subject to the notification requirements in Fish and Game Code 1602, and not the whole overall project. The actual project cost includes the cost of all the investigations, surveys, designs, labor, equipment, subcontracts, any materials. But an element not intended to be included in project costs are the costs associated with obtaining agency permits or licenses, any mitigation, or any CECO or NEPA compliance. So differences between the standard agreement and the routine maintenance agreement. The standard agreement, the correct fees need to be provided prior to reviewing the notification, and that notification may have multiple projects, and each project requires a fee that is due before that processing can begin. Whereas for a routine maintenance agreement, the base fee for a routine maintenance agreement needs to be provided prior to the review of the notification. But CDFW can determine the number of routine maintenance projects during that review of the notification, and then can specify the individual projects in the agreement. Then the project fees will need to be provided prior to implementing that specific project. So let's go back to our example of multiple projects affecting one stream. Remember, there are multiple projects within this notification that will each require a fee. We have the driveway replacement, which includes grading and a temporary diversion. Project number 2 is the energy dissipator in the northern field, and project 3 is the energy dissipator in the southern field. So while they are sort of interrelated, they are standalone projects. One project can be done without having to do the other. The names that have been entered for the projects will be populated in the fees section. You'll select each project one at a time, and then you'll click on the drop-down menu for project cost range and enter the cost of the work at that location. And as you can see here on the right, EPIMS calculates the project fee for each project and then provides a total fee owed. The final component is signature and submittal. Here's what you're going to see in EPIMS. And only the applicant or the designated representative can sign the final agreement. No other additional contact or lawyer or anyone who is not listed as the applicant or designated representative can sign. But once you're done entering all the required information within each component, and you have completed and selected the mark as complete button in each component, a green check mark will appear indicating that the component is ready for submission. Once all the components are complete and you have a check mark for each one, the applicant or the designated representative can sign and then submit that notification. I'm now going to hand it off to Aidali so she can talk about what comes after you submit your notification.
Hello, everyone. So now that the notification process is complete and you submitted your notification, there are several letters you can receive from CDFW in response to your submission. You may receive a notification fee required letter, an insufficient fee letter, or an incomplete letter. So I'll briefly discuss what each one means. If you receive a notification fee required letter, it is to inform you that the notification was received without payment. So it's recommended a notification and the associated fees be provided to CDFW within 5 business days of each other. If the fees and the notification are not received in a timely fashion, the notification may be closed. If the fees are submitted with no notification, CDFW may cancel or return the payment. So if you turn in just the fees, but you forget to turn in your notification, you may receive your payment back. And then to be clear, this letter isn't letting you know whether the fees you sent in are correct or not, just that a fee was not received. The second type of letter you may receive is the insufficient fee letter. So if it's determined that the notification fees are insufficient, CDFW will send out an insufficient fee letter. Fees may be insufficient due to a number of reasons, such as the number of projects that you sent fees in for was incorrect, or you submitted the fees for the incorrect agreement type. Staff often try to determine the appropriate number of projects and include details in the letter as to why the fees were insufficient, but this isn't always possible. So it's recommended that you contact your CDFW representative that sent out the insufficient letter and schedule a meeting to discuss to provide any clarity. So only when CDFW has received both the notification and associated fees, the 30-day review period will begin. So we need both to begin to review your notification. So if upon review, CDFW determines that the information contained within the notification is either insufficient, lacking, or missing, then CDFW will send out an incomplete letter. This letter will outline the sections of the notification that require further information. Contact the CDFW representative that sent out the incomplete letter and schedule a meeting to discuss if you need more clarity as to why your notification was deemed incomplete. So here are a couple reasons your notification may be deemed, how to respond to your incomplete letter. So when you're responding to your incomplete letter, we recommend that you adhere to the following. We recommend using the letter as a guide to providing a response. Be detailed to make it clear that what your project is and what it will consist of. Lack of detail may lead to another incomplete letter. You will formally submit your response through EPIMS and not just through an email. So do not resubmit your incomplete notification without providing information as to to provide more clarity onto the things we marked as incomplete, or your notification will be considered incomplete for a long time, and you'll only delay the agreement process. And your response to your disagreement, your response should not just be a disagreement to the incomplete letter. If there's a mistaken understanding of the project, provide information that supports your response and provides clarity to the issue. Once your notification has been deemed complete, CDFW has 60 days to issue a draft agreement or the following final documents that you see here on the screen. However, this time frame does not apply to long-term agreements. So if you receive an operation of law, this means that CDFW has missed the 60-day deadline and the project may be conducted as described in the notification via operation of law. This includes impacts, project term, seasonal work periods, mitigation and minimization measures, etc. What was on your notification is what you're allowed to proceed with. If anything in the project changes, the applicant needs to submit a new notification for the lake and streambed alteration agreement. Projects conducted under operation of law cannot be amended or extended. If CDFW determines that the project is substantial, but as notified, the project will not substantially cause any adverse impacts to fish or wildlife, an agreement is not required. There will be no refund, but you'll receive a no agreement needed letter that indicates that you can proceed with your project as outlined in your notification. Now, if CDFW determines that your project is not substantial and did not require notification in the first place, you'll receive a notification not required letter, and any fees that you submitted will be refunded. The conditions of a no agreement needed letter are similar to the constraints of an op law, and the project must be carried out as notified. So the draft agreement response timeline, an applicant has 30 days from issuance of a draft agreement to acknowledge receipt of the draft agreement. So, and then second, and on the draft agreement, you must respond to CDFW in writing regarding measures of the draft agreement within 90 days of issuance. CDFW does not have a set timeline to respond to comments. Simple edits are generally responded to quickly, but more complex edits may require more time and a higher level review. If you have questions about the draft agreement, please feel free to reach out to your CDFW to contact and discuss any disagreements. Now, responding to your draft agreement. You respond to your draft agreement in EPIMS. So as you see here on the screenshot, this is what your draft agreement will look like. It will be boxed in red and it will be like a blue link, and that you click on that link and it will download the draft agreement and you can begin to review the agreement. So once you have reviewed your agreement and you have any comments that you would like to provide, in the permittee response section, you will click Add Row. So if you agree with your draft agreement as written, you will select NA permittee agrees, and then you'll also enter the date that you are providing this response. And then in the comment box, you will type in permittee agrees with draft agreement version and has nothing further to add. Once this is complete, you'll select Save Row and you'll submit the draft agreement with the comments. If you do not agree with the draft agreement as written, you'll do the same process. You'll enter the date, but then in the draft agreement section, you will select what you disagree with in the draft agreement, in this case, reporting measures. And if it's a measure, you'll enter the measure number that you disagree with. So in this case, it'd be like measure 4.3. And the measure number is indicated in the draft agreement. In the response box, you'll enter a response as to what you do not agree with. And then once you're done providing all the comments, you'll select Save Row and you'll submit the component. If you have multiple responses you'd like to add, you'll repeat this process by selecting Add Row, entering the date, anything you disagree with, and then save the row and then submit each response that you have. So if you are having trouble throughout the EPIMS process, there are various resources available on the department website, such as FAQs, guides, and general program information. So one of our most recommended resources is EPIMS Help. It's on our website. And on this page, there are many materials that we have developed to help you navigate through EPIMS, including important things to know for using EPIMS, such as quick start guides, video tutorials, notification requirements, and links to relevant laws and regulations. This page also has links to other pages that will support your process through EPIMS. For example, here we have a screenshot of the video tutorials that are available on the page I just mentioned, EPIMS Help, and the quick start guides, which are checklists of all the required information that will be on the EPIMS form electronically. So you could take a look through and get all your materials prepared before notifying online. So the Lake and Streambed Alteration Program page is our homepage. It provides a general overview of what the program is about, which laws and regulations apply. It also has information on notification and agreements types, common questions and answers, laws and regulations, and any other information that you may find helpful, including fees and the fee schedule. If you need help with anything related to EPIMS, the EPIMS Help desk is available. Shannon, who runs this help desk, will be happy to help you. So if you need any help with adding additional context to a notification, associating users with organizations, any technical issues, or you need someone on your application, you need help getting in contact with the environmental scientists who helped you, login assistance, you could go to EPIMS Help and your problem will be resolved. Now here displayed on this slide are all the contacts for each region. As you can see, it's color-coded. And if you have project or site-related questions, we ask that you contact your region, as they have, they'll be able to provide project location-specific advice. And it's important to maintain good communication with your region as you work through your project. This slide is just another additional slide with all the links that we have that will support you to understand the LSA process and the EPIMS. And that is the end of our presentation. We want to thank you all for coming. We'll briefly start an informal Q&A session. I'll pass it on to Danielle.